Good afternoon. I call to order the April 22nd, 2025 regular meeting of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. For the record, my name is Kelly Maston, and I serve as Vice Chair of the Commission. Just a reminder to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices and speak clearly into the microphone when speaking at the dais or into the microphone giving testimony. Would the clerk please call roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum?
Commissioner Alexander.
Present.
Booty.
Present.
Hare.
Present.
Corrado is absent. Melblom.
Present.
Thomas.
Present.
Wallace.
Present.
Rodriguez.
Present.
Vice Chair, current Chair, Maston.
Present.
Chair Bjornberg is absent. There are 8 members present.
Let the record reflect that we do have quorum and that Chair Bjornberg and Commissioner Corrado provided proper notice that they have a conflict this afternoon and their absence is excused. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for this meeting. We will work from the agendas that are available by the clerk. I will go through the agenda and sort out which items will be discussed and which items will be put on the consent agenda to be approved as recommended by staff and without further discussion. Item number 4 is addresses at the Glendale Townhouse Historic District, Ward 2, which has been continued from the April 8th, 2025 meeting. This application is for a local designation. Item number 4 will be discussed. Item number 5 is for 275 Market Street and 810 Glenwood Avenue, Ward 5. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness. Item number 5 will be on the consent agenda unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Item number 6 is 88 17th Street North, Ward 7. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness. Item number 6 will be on consent unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. This is the proposed agenda. The consent items will include item number 5, 275 Market Street, 810 Glenwood Avenue South, or Avenue, Ward 5, and item number 6, 88 17th Street North, Ward 7. And item number 4 will be continued for discussion. Is there any opposition from commissioners to the staff recommendations for these items? Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak in opposition to these items? Hearing no opposition on placing these items on consent, we will approve these consent items in one motion at the start of the meeting. The following item will have staff presentation, public comment, and commission discussion and action. Item number 4 is addresses at Glendale Historic District, Ward 2, which has been continued from the April 8th, 2025 meeting. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the proposed agenda?
Hare so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Hare. Is there a second?
Wallace seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The agenda is approved. Our next order of business will be to approve the minutes from our April 8th, 2025 meeting. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Melblom moves approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Is there a second?
Wallace seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions, including any commissioners who are absent?
Hare abstains.
Thank you, Commissioner Hare. The minutes are approved. Okay. Before I open the hearing to public comments, let me summarize the process for conducting the public hearing. First, we will act on the consent agenda we just set. Once items on the consent agenda are approved, I'm sorry, I'm just a little nervous. The commission is done with those items. Applicants may contact the planning staff tomorrow about next steps. After the consent agenda items are approved, we will take each remaining agenda item in order. Planning staff will present its report to commissioners, and commissioners may ask questions of staff. Then I will open the public hearing, and we will hear from the applicant, and commissioners may ask questions of the applicant. After that, we will invite public comment. If you wish to speak, we need you to do two things. One, please be sure to sign up on the sheet over by the clerk. If you haven't done this already, you can do so afterwards. When you come up to testify, you must state your name and address for the record. Please keep your comments specific to the application before us today. If you have materials to hand out, please give them to our committee clerk so that they can be distributed to the commission and entered into the record. Do not approach the commissioners on the dais. After the public comments are complete, I will close the hearing and commissioners will deliberate and act on applications before us. So let's move on to the consent agenda. I will now open the public hearing for consent agenda items. Again, they are item number 5, 275 Market Street and 810 Glenwood Avenue, Ward 5, and item number 6, 88 17th Street North, Ward 7. Again, do we have any commissioners opposed to the staff recommendations for these items? Are there any members of the public who oppose the staff recommendation for these items? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing on the consent items. May I have a motion to approve the staff findings and recommendations for these items?
Alexander moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Alexander. Is there a second?
Melblum seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblum. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? These items are approved as recommended by staff on the agenda. Applicants may contact planning staff about next steps. So we'll now move on to item number 4, which was addresses at Glendale Historic District, Ward 2, which has been continued from the April 8th, 2025 meeting. This application is for a local designation. The staff report was presented by Mr. Skalecki at the April 8th meeting, and I will now continue the public hearing for this item. I understand the applicant, Councilmember Wansley, is here and would like to speak. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you all, commissioners, for having me today. I am Councilmember Robin Wansley. I represent Ward 2. I currently am, I believe, I have a protective clause on my address due to a bomb threat a few years ago, so will not be sharing the address. But that said, I do have a few comments to share with you all. So first, members of the commission, again, thank you for having me. Once again, I represent Ward 2 on the Minneapolis City Council, which includes Prospect Park, where Glendale Townhomes is located, and I nominated Glendale Townhomes for historic designation last year. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to come before you again today to offer some brief comments and to ask you once again to recommend Glendale Townhomes for historic designation. You've heard from many residents from Glendale about why they believe that Glendale meets the criteria for historic designation, and I want to uplift these lived experiences from the decades of residents who have called Glendale home. Dozens of current and past Glendale residents, neighbors, and individuals from all across the city have submitted public comment underscoring the cultural and historic value of Glendale as the city's oldest Section 9 public housing, as the city's only townhome-style public housing, and as a community that has had a unique role in Minneapolis for over 70 years. And you've also received testimony from preservation experts like Hez Royce and Rethos affirming that Glendale meets the criteria for designation. Now, the narrative by the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority that the application for historic designation is based in racism specifically by Prospect Park residents, is not only just completely false, but most importantly, it's not relevant to the matter that is before you all today, which is whether or not Glendale meets the criteria for historic designation, which it clearly does. The claim that historic designation is somehow motivated by racism is also inconsistent with the fact that historic designation is a tool that historically been used to protect and preserve properties that are associated with wealth and whiteness. And a quick review of the map of historic landmarks and districts in the city immediately shows that there are mostly concentrated downtown and in southwest Minneapolis. And it's no coincidence that the historic status of these landmarks overlaps with the wealthiest and whitest areas. But we also know that those areas aren't the only areas with landmarks that actually meet the historic designation criteria, and Glendale is a perfect example of that. And uplifting the significance of landmarks in districts with histories that explicitly relate to the history of working class and low-income residents, residents of color, and public housing residents is part of how we move towards historic designation being a more equitable tool that preserves all of our history, which is even more important in our national landscape where we have a federal administration that is openly removing and erasing the stories and physical representations of Black and Brown communities and their respective histories. So on that note, I want to uplift the perspective that actually Commissioner Melblum shared at the HBC meeting last year about how he first approached this vote with the plan to actually vote in opposition, believing that the alterations that had been made to Glendale, specifically the buildings, would have disqualified them from historic designation. But through engagement with the cultural and social history of Glendale, as well as leaning into the questions around bias and historic preservation, he arrived at the opinion of supporting preservation. In fact, Commissioner Melblum ended his vote with the comment saying, once these buildings are gone, even in their compromised state, we will never have that historic memorial to a set of ideas that was put forth by Mayor Humphrey to help the people who are less fortunate in our community become stronger members of our community. So I'll conclude with saying that the HPC in 2021 found that Glendale Townhomes met the criteria of historic designation. And so did this body in the fall of 2024. So it's with this spirit that I urge you all to continue your recommendation in support of historic designation for Glendale Townhomes today. And once again, thank you so much for having me to share some comments with you.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? I don't think there are any, so I think you can return. Thank you very much.
A little too early.
Okay, so we'll now continue with the public comments, which began at the April 8th meeting. If you spoke on April 8th, please refrain from speaking again. I will ask again that we limit comments to 2 minutes and that your comments should be to provide new information. Do we have an interpreter?
I've been in.
Okay. I know one has.
Apologies, Chair. I've been in contact with Neighborhood Community Relations, who we requested an interpreter through, but there seems to have been a miscommunication. So we have not personally been contacted by them, but if they're here, we'd love to talk to them.
Okay. So if you are using an interpreter, you'll have 4 minutes to speak. And we'll begin with anyone who signed up on April 8th, but was unable to speak during the time limits that day. And after that, we'll move on to those who have signed up today. So I'm going to start with that list. Is Umi here? She already spoke? Okay. Is Edward Barber here? Okay. Shail Jama? Okay. So please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, all of you. My name is Charlie Jama. I'm from Glendale, 2843 Delaware Resorts, Minneapolis.
You understood that? Okay. He's from Glendale on 28th and Delaware. And his name is Jama.
waa mahadsantihiin. Annaga waxaan ka cabanaynaa in la barakiciyo. Barakacna ma u baahan dan iska danyar baan nahay.
Thank you all. We are afraid of being displaced. We don't want to be displaced. We are low-income people.
Haddana in nalagu soo celinayana mana garanayno. Wax cadeen oo nalagu soo celinayana mana la siinin.
They have no plans for us to go where we're going. There's nothing that is proven or documented, and we have no idea where they want to take us.
Marka hadda systemkana waxaa dhahay wuu isbedelayaa. Marka wixii aan bixin jirnay wax ka badan in la saarana waan ka cabsoonaynaa.
They also want to change everything and try to increase our rents. And that's what I'm afraid of also, when they want to change everything.
Ilmo yaryaraan haysanaa marka iskuulkii iyo isbitaaladii iyo dukaamadii wixii oo dhan noo dhow meel kaloo dheerna ma aadi karno.
We have everything near us. We have the schools, we have the hospitals. Everything is near us, and we cannot move anywhere far, far away.
Waxaan kaloo dhihi lahaa guryaha muddo badan aan deganeen markii la dayactirayo annagoo degan aan loogu dayactirayaa. Marka waxaan rabnaa sidii awalna loogu dayactiray in loogu dayactiro oo nalaga duminin. Waxaan kala codsanayaa taariikhda guryahana in la baabi'inin.
We don't want the history of Glendale to be basically erased. I have lived in Glendale for a long time. They can fix and make inside repairs to the homes while we are in the homes.
Marka waxaan idinka codsanaynaa in naloo daryeero codsigeena soo jeedana inaan naga aqbali doontaan aan u maleena waadna mahadsantihiin.
We are asking for your help, and we are also asking you to support us. We thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is Samira Abdi here? Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Okay, hi, my name is Samira Abdi, and currently I'm living in the Central Avenue Lofts on 24th and Central. Oh, okay, sorry, let me get started. Give me a sec. Okay, so my name is Samira, and I'm a former resident of Glendale. I still visit because my friends and family live there, so I'm still very much a part of the community. But what I wanted to say was, sorry, give me a second. I'm very grateful that I got to grow up in Glendale because of the unique experiences that I had, you know, culture, not just Somali culture, but like it was a multicultural community, so I got to experience other cultures, and you know, they had cultural events, and I got to be a part of that and make friends with other people in the community. So I think, to me, what I remember the most was those community activities and those like cultural events, and that was the most important part of Glendale to me, was the cultural history, and that is what I wanted to be preserved if we get historic preservation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Natasha Reeves here? Okay. Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hello. My name is Natasha Reeves, and I am a proud resident at the Glendales. I am on the St. Mary side. This community has been a significant and positive change for my daughter and me. We moved from St. Paul to Minneapolis not too long ago. Having been born in Chicago and raised in St. Paul has been an opportunity that I am grateful for. Glendale has been a critical stepping stone for me. My biggest goal is to become a homeowner. I would be the first homeowner of my family generational line, all the way down. While working towards my goal, Glendale offers a sense of community and security that I deeply value. My daughter can safely play in the open playground, and we both benefit from the connection with the neighbors and the recreation center. This kind of environment I am grateful to provide to her. That's why I am committed to shaping Glendale for the future families. I want future generations to experience this same sense of belonging and opportunity. While change can be unsettling, scary, and as many of us feel scared, which I'm understanding that my neighbors are very scared of this huge change, I want them to understand I am still facing the fear of the change that I'm living in today. I won't even change my residential ID because I'm scared to be a Minnesota resident, or a Minneapolis resident, I'm sorry. It's scary, but Glendale deserves this. Glendale deserves all the new changes that I see around them. I feel that seeing MPHA's examples of successful redevelopment projects and seeing the happy endings, seeing families come back to their homes, I feel that this is a great opportunity for them all. So I do vote no to the redevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do have an update. We do have the translation services available. There are 2 translators. One will be in the adjoining room to provide, I think, English to Somali, and there will be also a translator available at the podium if necessary. So that's that status. Thank you, Natasha, for your comments. Is Abdul Malik Hassan here? Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Testing. Okay, good evening. My name is Abdul Malik Hassan, representing my mom Rashida Khan from St. Mary Avenue. My mom lives in Glendale for the past 5 years. Recently, my mom was diagnosed with sciatica, and since the new year, she has suffered nerve pinching twice and was unable to move until we took her to the emergency room. She then stayed with my sister until she felt better because her apartment had elevator. My mom wishes to stay and continue to live in Glendale for the foreseeable future. The redevelopment program offers an opportunity to reside without suffering, to go up and down to your bedroom and do basic things without needing help. The chance to have your bedroom, living room, and kitchen in all of them in the same level is a relief for her and others like her. She would not worry about flooding basement, running things every time it rains heavy, a soundproof wall so she doesn't have to hear her neighbors when they're walking up their stairs or coming down from their stairs. Constantly hearing loud construction noise, road noise, cars that have beeping problems. Designating Glendale as a historical site does not benefit the community. History and culture are carried by the people, not the place. Policies to preserve those histories and culture should benefit the people of that culture, not a place that is turned into a museum for tourists to visit. What she wants to ask for is a protection to be placed so that the residents are not displaced or privatization of the rent that might increase. MPHA, during the last hearing, did promise those in front of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to people who signed up today. Kiana Vang. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Kiana Vang, and I currently reside at 1829 Gerard Avenue North. And I am on the Policy and Strategic Initiatives team at MPHA, and our department has helped co-lead Glendale resident organizing over the last year. Since late last year, MPHA has hosted monthly listening sessions with Glendale residents to learn how they feel about their homes and what improvements they would prioritize. These meetings have been well attended and have generated robust conversations among residents. Our most recent April meeting had as many as 75 attendees. It is in these meetings that agency staff have shared and discussed the resident FAQ that accompanied your materials today, clarifying many of the questions and comments we have heard. They have also been translated in both English and Somali. It is in these meetings that residents have identified their 11 priorities as a part of any renovation or redevelopment. It is in these meetings that agency staff have presented initial renovation and redevelopment approaches for residents to consider, along with extensive feedback sessions. MPHA has also detailed resident commitments and protections that would accompany any large-scale construction project. I say all this to say, MPHA is centering resident voices and experiences in conversations about the future of Glendale. However, a historic designation threatens MPHA's ability to bring the vision of Glendale's nearly 600 residents to life. Voting to designate Glendale historic would lock residents in 70-year-old homes that do not meet the needs of today's families. It would immediately stop residents from considering larger redevelopment options that would address the greatest number of resident priorities. And it would stop MPHA from taking more people off its waiting list that currently runs nearly 4,300 families long. Glendale residents do not want this. This community wants the opportunity to control its destiny, to meet the aspirations of current and future Glendale families. So, on behalf of Glendale families, please oppose this designation and let residents shape the future of the community that they love.
Thank you. Is Rashid Isaac here?
Good afternoon. My name is Rashid Isaac, and I have worked at MPHA for the last 21 years. For the last 3 years, I've served as MPHA's Director of Affordable Property Operations. In my current role, I oversee the operations for MPHA's nearly 800 scattered site family units. This portfolio serves more than 3,000 residents, more than half of whom are children. In 2020, MPHA converted these homes from Section 9 public housing to the Section 8 housing choice voucher platform. By doing this, MPHA more than doubled the federal subsidy for owning and operating the same units, serving the same families. Additionally, residents' rent remained 30% of their income. This housing is a proven economic mobility tool like no other. For the current heads of households in these homes, 24% were employed when they entered their MPHA home. On average, these residents earned $26,000 a year. Today, 55% of the same residents are employed, earning an average of $43,000 a year. And families don't stay in these units forever. The average family stays for 6 years before moving on to other housing. And better yet, since 2020, nearly 14% of the families who moved out of these homes purchased their own homes. The fact is, there are few things as life-altering as the stabilizing force of MPHA's family housing. And Glendale provides MPHA the opportunity to add more of this incredible resource for the more than 4,000 families on the agency's wait list. So when we say generational investment, we mean the opportunity to change the lives of thousands of families in the coming decades with new family housing at Glendale. So I please encourage you to say no to this application to preserve Glendale for the families that live there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we're going to take a moment to have an interpreter speak to the group.
My apology. I am Abdul Nazir Musaid, one of the two Somali interpreters that are assigned to this meeting to interpret for the Somali speakers. So I will be in the back room interpreting for those, so I don't have to whisper to them and become nuisance to others sitting by me. I thought that would be more practical. If that's okay with you, that's what I plan on doing.
I think that sounds great. Do you want to tell everybody in Somali that you will be doing that?
waxaan jira walaalayaal dadkeena Soomaali ku hadla qol halkan ayaa jira oo fadhila aad ka daawan kartaan kulanka tarjumka adeeg idinku sameeynaa si aanan si fiican inoogu maqashaan marka soo raacaan qofkii afsoo halkan jira qof kale Soomaali ah jooga.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Thank you.
The next name I have is Tamika Baskin. Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Tamika Baskin. I'm an employee of MPHA. I am the Assistant Director of Low-Income Public Housing Operations with Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, and I am here to share a statement from one of my team members, Mary Vang, whose family immigrated here to the United States in the early 80s and landed in MPHA Public Housing from the family housing. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today, so I'll be reading the statement on her behalf. This is from Mary. My parents arrived in the United States in the early 1980s as refugees from Laos escaping the Vietnam War. When my parents first arrived to the U.S., they were fortunate enough to get into an MPHA family home, providing our family with safe, stable roof over our heads. This housing was critical for my family because it provided us with stability in our new country. Public housing made my family feel secure. Knowing there was going to be a roof over our heads allowed my parents to work hard, save money, and achieve the American dream of buying their own house after a few years. Fast forward to today, and I stand on their shoulders as serving as a regional property manager within Minneapolis Public Housing Authority's operations team. I am the first Hmong American to hold this role at MPHA. My family story is one of resilience, hard work, and success. And it all started with MPHA Family Housing 4 decades ago. Please give the 4,000 families on MPHA's family housing waitlist the same opportunity mine had to change their lives. Vote to give Glendale residents the chance to shape the future for the next generations, and vote to deny designating Glendale historic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Drew Halunen. Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hey there. My name is Drew Holden, 1211 4th Street Northeast. I am the Director of Communications and Strategic Partnerships at MPHA. I want to spend a little bit of time recounting what we've heard today and at the previous meeting, and importantly also what we did not hear in either of those meetings. During the April 8th meeting, we learned that CPED denied against historic designation. Again. We learned that SHPO does not support designation. Again. We've also heard quite a bit from residents. We've heard that how important their home is and how much they love their communities. We've heard that MPHA makes them feel safe. It makes them feel seen. It makes them feel cared for. And we also heard very real fear of what would happen if a resident was displaced or if they lost their home. Unfortunately, that fear has been stoked by individuals seeking to sow confusion and mistrust in a vulnerable population. And we also heard from neighbors. We heard from neighbors who support imposing these restrictions on this community, saying it'll be good for them. Commissioners, I think it's also that we're honest with ourselves. It's important to be honest with ourselves about what we did not hear in these two meetings. How historic designation would preserve Section 9 funding? Because it does not. How historic designation would preserve these residents' homes? Because it does not. How historic designation would improve accessibility for disabled and elderly residents? Because it does not. How historic designation would help the more than 4,000 families on MPHA's family housing waitlist get into a home? Because it does not. And how historic designation would help MPHA address a $22 million capital backlog on these homes? Commissioners, because it does not. You heard from a gentleman earlier today that histories and cultures are carried by the people, not the place. MPHA strongly agrees with that. We have from the onset of this. But the historic designation today locks residents in these 70-year-old homes with no option for redevelopment. I ask you, please deny this application and give residents the opportunity to shape their vision for the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Cora McCarvey. Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
It's Cora McCorvey, and good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today. I served as MPHA's Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer for 27 years. I retired in 2017. I'm here to affirm Prospect Park Association has opposed MPHA investing in Glendale since day one. When we started conversations about redeveloping Glendale more than a decade ago, I attended a series of meetings in Prospect Park. In those meetings, I was met with vitriol and anger. I was berated by attendees opposed to MPHA improving Glendale. Unfortunately, this continues Prospect Park Association's century-old legacy of opposing black families. Commissioners, let me introduce you to the Jacksons. Amy and Madison Jackson moved into Prospect Park in 1908, the first black family to move into the all-white neighborhood. In 1909, Prospect Park Association organized 125 neighbors and marched on the Jacksons' home, urging them to leave. The Tribune captured this event with the headline, "Race War Started in Prospect Park." Marvel Jackson, the eldest daughter, recounted Prospect Park Association got together and they decided they didn't want a black family in their community. It's believed that this event inspired racial covenants being used in Minneapolis, with the first covenant appearing a year later. The Jackson family endured until 1927, when they sold their home and moved soon after Mr. Jackson died. Prospect Park remained an all-white neighborhood until 1960. Commissioners, we are on the cusp of repeating history. Designating Glendale historic will lock 600 low-income residents, 89% of whom are black, in 70-plus-year-old homes and prevent MPHA from making a generational investment. It will also stop new black families like the Jacksons from moving into Prospect Park in the next century. Do not codify Prospect Park Association's shameful legacy. Vote to deny the application to designate Glendale historic.
Thank you for your comments. Shale, is that? Okay, you've already gone. Ben Sandvig? Layla? Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Layla and I live in St. Mary's Avenue. I am 16 years old. I've lived in Glendale for almost all my life. Glendale is a community that has provided my family with opportunities and space to call home. I believe Glendale should get a historic designation because the community is safe. Everyone can step outside their homes freely. There's no dangerous roads. Everyone can play, everyone can go outside freely, and everyone just loves being around each other. Glendale has an exhibit once every year or two that teaches people so much things about Glendale's history and cultures. Glendale exhibit has taught me so much. The history of Glendale and the active youth leaders for almost 5 decades ago. I am proud to be a part of the history along with the diverse community that protect each other, uniting side by side to protect their loved homes. We would all appreciate if you say yes for townhouse, for Glendale Townhomes Historic Designation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Saeed Ali. Malik Abdiaziz. Please step forward and state your name and address.
Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Malik Abdiaziz. I live at 76 Williams Avenue, Southeast. I have lived at Prospect Park for about 16 years. I'm 19 for the record, so for practically my entire life. And I've seen the community here. I've grown up here. I've seen my neighbors. I've seen my family. And I saw the fear on their faces a decade ago when these townhomes were almost demolished by MPHA. And there is a large worry that this is happening again. And one of the most confusing things that I've been working as a volunteer to try and communicate with the community to see what exactly they think. And one of the most confusing things that I've heard is the idea that historic preservation would prevent the interior renovation of the homes. I believe this is just completely wrong. In very similar townhomes such as Griswold Heights and Corliss Park in other states, townhomes that look exactly like ours from inside and outside, their housing committee or association were able to renovate these homes while the people lived in there without affecting the foundation or anything like that. I think that there's no reason that something like that shouldn't be able to happen here. We all want interior renovations. That's what we've been asking for the past 10 years, and what we haven't been getting. I've heard about people with mold all over their house that haven't been getting fixed. Sinks are broken, walls are falling off. My sink, my basement has been broken, and I've called 3 times and it's not been getting fixed. The idea that these renovations are just coming and the only reason they're not is because of this is just wrong. They haven't been coming for the past decade, and they're not going to come if historic preservation is opposed. I think that I very strongly hope that you approve of this movement.
Thank you for your comments. Abdul Malik Hassan. And you were doing, okay. Noah Tillman. Please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm Noah Tillman. I live on the 2800 block of Delaware Street, Southeast. I'm a resident of Glendale. I'm also an employee of MPHA. I like Glendale for a lot of different reasons. I'm from the Bronx, New York, so I'm used to like kind of living on top of people. And Glendale is like one of those communities, and I've lived in Minneapolis since 1996. It's the first time that I felt someplace like leaving my son outside without me having to watch him. And I feel safe doing that there. I trust the community. I work for MPHA, and I worked a part of the Family Housing Resources Project with the new 16 units that they constructed, and I work very closely in managing that, and I saw how, homeless people and different people get a chance to move into upgraded units and feel, a different sense of being alive into a unit and not being able to forced to live in like a slumlord situation. So I think that if y'all say yes to this and keep it historic, MPHA won't have the opportunity to upgrade the houses and give the tenants and the residents what they need as far as future families and stuff like that to move forward. And I think that Glendale is a super good community as far as like I don't do too much with the racism stuff, but I know that it's a real good community as far as like wholesome people in different ethnicities and cultural backgrounds, and everybody kind of gets together and makes sure that all the kids are safe, and I like that about that community. I suggest that y'all vote no. I would love to see that. I would love to see MPHA do the job that they have planned for the community and upgrade people's homes so that they can experience a better, a chance at life like everybody else wants. And that's my take right there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Cam Gordon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your service, and thanks for the opportunity for letting me speak here. My name is Cam Gordon. I live at 914 Franklin Terrace. And if you looked at your staff report, you may recall that my name is mentioned in there. I served on the city council for some 16 years, and I nominated Glendale for historic designation previously. There was a lot left out in that report about that time, so if you have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. I'll just tell you a little bit about my story. I was resistant to nominate Glendale Historic as a historic designation originally. I was concerned about it. I tried to reach out to the MPHA executive director and see if the property owner, had any concerns. They did. They didn't want to do any research. They didn't want to find out anything. Just like they said in their presentation last time, they opposed it from the get-go. Just so happens that the MPHA owns a very, very valuable piece of property here, right there by the University of Minnesota and by the light rail. And I think that's a concern. I think there's lots of concerns and there's lots of interest about this and what should happen there. And I was concerned about that too. But I said, if this actually meets the legal criteria, I'll move forward, and I was willing to nominate it on the condition that if it doesn't meet any of the criteria, if it can't be legally designated, I'm not going to keep moving forward and pushing it forward. I tried to take it with an open mind. Unlike you, I wasn't an expert in historic designation, and I wanted the experts to get to weigh in and look at it. They did, and they came back saying there were 2 criteria that it met. Neither of those criteria have anything to do with renovating the buildings even. One of them has to do with the social and cultural significance in the history of it. I would suggest that that social and cultural significance does point to a person, even though it doesn't meet the criteria of the person, but it's Hubert H. Humphrey and the whole movement after the war and the whole housing period and all that development that happened there. And the other criteria that it meets, that everybody seems to agree, even the city staff who are denying approval, I guess I have to be done. Darn, it's just getting started.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Cam.
If you have any questions, I'll be around.
I see a Samira Ali. Is this the same? Okay, nope, new one. Okay.
We have very similar names. My name is Samira. I live in North Minneapolis, 2950 Oliver Avenue North. My name is Samira. I live in North. I'm a graduate student at the University of Minnesota, working with my community partner, Defend Glendale Public Housing Coalition. I will use my time today to highlight the value in designating Glendale as a historic landmark. In August of 2024, the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Office stated that it believes a compelling argument could be made for nominating Glendale to the National Register of Historic Places and recommended investigating several themes and programs to support eligibility under Criteria A of social history. Based on archival research and the guidance of the office, I believe Glendale is eligible for listing in the National Register. Nationally, only 3% of all National Register listings are considered significant for African American history. This is even less visible in Minnesota, where less than 1% of listings are considered significant to Black history. Glendale offers a rare opportunity to document and honor the contributions of BIPOC and working class residents to the history of Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota. In 2022, Glendale residents uncovered several archival materials housed at the Hennepin County Library Special Collections. Through oral history interviews and archival research, residents discovered a rich tradition of community organizing and advocacy of the residents. Examples include resident advocacy for tenant representation on the Housing Authority's Board of Commissioners, to the launch of the Little Co-op Store, which was a tenant-owned food cooperative. These are just some of the examples of the way Glendale Town Home stands as a testament to the courage, creativity, ingenuity, and care of public housing residents, as well as their contributions to Minneapolis's working class history. Public housing residents have participated in and continue to shape the political and social history of Minneapolis. Minnesota history is incomplete without the inclusion and preservation of their stories, as well as their homes. I hope that the HPC will consider the ongoing effort and rich history of this community and designate Glendale as a historic district. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And that completed my list. Are there any others who wish to speak? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's discuss. Does anyone have any concerns or comments on the proposed application? Commissioner Melblom.
I'll jump in. Thank you. Chair Maston or Vice Chair Maston. I'm not sure what the proper term is, but so I made the motion our last meeting, and I did change my opinion hearing the testimony last time, and I feel similarly this time that nothing presented has changed my opinion that we should designate this site as historic. The document that Mr. Skolecki provided was a really nice analysis of this, but it did find that based on criterias 1 and 5, that the building does have the potential to be recognized. What I think is relevant and new to me, at least new related, is a lot of the pushback to designating the Glendale community as historic has been because there's been substantial alterations to the building over time. And I think we'd all recognize that's correct. But that doesn't erase the social and cultural history. This was the location of the first Head Start. The site retains its landscape and volumetric integrity. It still retains its status as a history of working class housing and the city's commitment to trying to house the underclasses of our city. I would go along and add to that to further, I'd like to say, diminish the focus on only the architectural quality of the homes. To say that when we designated the Prince Rogers Nelson home back about, I think it was 4 or 5 months ago, there was the findings in there, which we accepted at the time, unanimously, if I remember correctly, that the house has been substantially changed, that house has had stone added to the front. It has had a garage added to it, and has had other changes over time. Yet, this body felt that those architectural changes did not negate the social importance of the Prince Rogers Nelson childhood home. And I would make the same argument here, is that the changes to these buildings do not erase the historical significance of this being the remaining and oldest affordable housing project in the city, in the city of Minneapolis. When I read through the historic preservation opinion from the SHPO folks, it talks specifically about the magnitude of the alterations to the building. They say, I quote, "We concur that the Glendale Townhouse Historic District is historically important as an early example of affordable housing for veterans and low-income residents constructed in response to the housing shortage following World War II. However, due to the magnitude of the alterations to the building in 1972 and 1989, the historic integrity of the entire housing complex has been dramatically and irreversibly compromised." I fully agree. But I think to designate historic sites only on the architectural integrity is ignoring this many other components that make our city rich and wonderful. So because of that, I do not agree with the Planning and Economic Development Commission's or department's recommendation that we not recognize this as historically relevant district.
Thank you. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Sure. I'll add on to that, actually. I think that we're taking too narrow of a view to say that the only kind of period of significance, as it were, is 1950s, only post-war kind of veterans coming in, going to the university, living in these houses. One of the things that really struck me in one of the previous staff reports was kind of the mention of how the residents kind of pushed to become members of the Housing Redevelopment Authority Board. That happened in 1968, and then in 1972, that board played a big role in the changes that were made to some of the fabric of the building. The roofs, I think, were mentioned in the last meeting. And so I feel like that's a really compelling argument for acknowledging this social and cultural history that was changing in this period, and that obviously doesn't encompass all of the changes that were made. That's only kind of the hipped roofs versus the flat roofs. But in this period, social change was happening. As a result of that social change, modifications were made to the building. To me, I feel like that's an argument for significance and for integrity up to that period of some of the changes.
Thank you. Commissioner Wallace. Thomas.
Thanks, Chair. It is Thomas or Wallace. I came prepared, so I'm just going to read what I came prepared with. The Glendale townhomes hold deep social, cultural, and historical value, and I want to share why I believe this nomination deserves our support. Glendale was Minneapolis's first public housing development, built in response to the post-World War II housing crisis. It was more than just buildings. It was a public declaration that housing should be for everyone and not just for the wealthy. That's why I believe this nomination is supported under Criterion 1 for its strong association with broad patterns of social and political history. Glendale marked a major shift in how our city addressed housing access, and it continues to reflect that legacy. I also believe it meets Criterion 5 because it's a defining part of the Prospect Park neighborhood's identity. That layout with the shared green spaces and that thoughtful site plan make Glendale a rare example of low-density public housing that feels like a neighborhood, whether it was intentionally designed that way or not, because I know there's some question about that. I do still believe it reflects a distinct model of integration and community building. And while some may question Glendale's eligibility under Criterion 4, I'll echo what my other fellow commissioners had mentioned. I actually believe it still qualifies because, yes, there have been changes with the roofs and the windows and sidings, but those tell a story, a compelling story over time. And the overall form, massing, layout, and relationship between buildings remains intact. In preservation, the standard isn't perfection, it's whether a place retains the physical features that convey its significance. If an original owner were to come to those houses today, I believe they would still easily recognize them as their home. Glendale has thrived as a vibrant community for over 70 years, and generations of residents have updated, adapted, and lovingly maintained these homes. To be clear, historic designation does not mean that these homes must remain outdated. It does not prevent upgrades like HVAC, better insulation, accessibility improvements, or other essential modernizations. What it does ensure is that change happens with public accountability. City staff received numerous comments from residents and community members in support, and I believe that kind of civic engagement speaks volumes. Glendale matters, not just to those who live there now, but to a wider network of people who see its meaning and its legacy. I believe its value lies in what it represents, which is a family-oriented, low-density model of public housing that was thoughtfully integrated into a neighborhood, and that the community that holds it together deserves recognition and protection. And once again, we're in a moment of housing crisis, and Glendale is a reminder that our city chose to build during the last one, and that this designation gives current residents a greater voice in shaping what comes next. I believe historic designation does not oppose change. It just insists that change be just, inclusive, and rooted in community. So that's why I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your comments today. We do appreciate your insight and your experience. I don't have much to add, as I'm in agreement with what commissioners have said here. Something that I do want to underline is that historic designation does not prevent the upgrades that have been described as needed, as wanted, as advocated for a long time. Designation does not prevent that. And so I think there's some miscommunication around that fact. Our charge here is rather narrow. We are here to basically evaluate whether or not this property is historically significant. There's been a lot of evidence for that, and I know that the primary challenge to the significance, or rather the eligibility for listing, is its integrity. And for the reasons that my fellow commissioners have outlined, I too agree that it retains integrity to be listed. The other piece that I did just want to underline is that the designation doesn't prevent residents from shaping their future. And in fact, for all the reasons that Commissioner Thomas outlined, designation elevates the conversation around what can and can't be done to the property and that or on the exterior, but that residents have a greater voice, and clearly the public comment from last time and this time have shown differences of opinion, but an agreed upon vision that this property and this community matters, and for all of the reasons that you've described, the people involved in neighborhood and all of that. The other piece is that designation doesn't prevent MPHA from serving residents' needs. It doesn't prevent MPHA from investing in renovation. It doesn't keep them from digging back into that $22 million backlog. That is not because of historic designation. So I just want to kind of lay that out. But again, our charge here is not around that. It is to vote on whether or not this property is historically significant. So while we may have our own opinions about everything else that's been described, that is really our focus of today. So I appreciate everybody providing comments. It's incredibly important to us as a public-facing commission to be able to hear from everyone, and so I appreciate that. But for the reasons that I've outlined, I would also support a designation.
Commissioner Hare.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I apologize for my absence. Last meeting, I was able to review the video that was recorded of the session, and I really appreciate all that came to speak before us, tell us their heartfelt stories and thoughtful reasons why or why not this community shall gain historic designation. You know, this topic item is highly political, but I agree with my fellow commissioners, you know, that we need to try to see through the politics of this all and really look at the property in a whole. And I too will support the historic nomination.
Thank you, Commissioner Hare. Anyone else? I guess I could also say that when we saw this come before us, was it last June? At that point, I felt pretty strongly that the site had retained its significance under criterion 1 and 5, and I think I still feel that way for many of the reasons that our commission has already laid out. So with all of that, would anyone like to make a motion? Commissioner Melblom.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion, but before I do that, I'd like to make one comment. I think we do need to recognize that the buildings have substantial deferred maintenance, and that's an unfortunate thing that MPHA is going to have to deal with I'd like to believe that none of us are ignorant of the difficulty it's going to be to get that money and to change the buildings, to upgrade them and update them. But I don't think that's not ruling how I see the sense of this as being historically appropriate. So I'd like to make the motion that, notwithstanding the staff recommendation, I move that the Heritage Preservation Commission recommends that the City Council approve the local designation of the Glendale Townhouses Historic District because it complies with local designation criteria number 1 and 5.
Thomas seconds.
Andrea Burke.
Thank you, Vice Chair Masson and Commissioner Melbaum. I want to provide some guidance as you are putting together this motion because there are very real implications as this continues down the path that I want you to consider at this point in time. So as you mentioned, you have started the motion as, correctly, notwithstanding staff recommendation, because staff has recommended denial. And in making this motion to overturn, just to guide you in some of the things, and you have made a few findings. I'm going to ask you to repeat them because I'm trying to note them as well. But just reminding you to make findings relative to the criteria of significance and the historic integrity to justify the rationale for designation. Staff is also strongly suggesting that the HPC propose a period of significance because that was not done. We proposed a period of significance, but we're denying, staff is recommending a denial of the application. Proposing a period of significance with a justification for historic integrity within that period of significance. Because if it is, thinking down the scenarios, if it is designated by council in the end, changes to the property's physical features will need to be evaluated through historic design review processes in perpetuity. And if there's unclear or conflicting information about the criteria of significance, the period of significance, and/or the historic integrity in a designation, it can complicate the review process going forward. So, I'm not here to tell you what that is. That's for you to decide. But regarding period of significance, I encourage you to look at either turning points in the date of the criteria of significance that you are selecting to overturn staff recommendation. Construction dates as an option. There are different options for doing that for this potential historic district, but wanted to suggest that as some boundary for this to help this. If this goes through, obviously there still needs to be a vote and so on and so forth, but if I may provide such guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have a suggestion? Commissioner Melblum.
Not about the period of significance, but the findings. I ground my motion in the fact that this is the first affordable housing project in Minneapolis, and thus its social history and community planning qualified as landmarkable. The site retains its landscaping and volumetric integrity. And those were the two pieces that I particularly landed on. I would welcome others' observations to amend my motion with other findings.
Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I agree, second what Commissioner Melbaum just said. The other pieces that I've been considering around this in terms of the integrity of the property, while yes, there have been alterations that, particularly to the entryways and to the roof, and those are significant. We've kind of established all of that and agree there. I don't believe that those, or I don't see that those alterations have diminished the ability of the property to convey its historical significance under Criterion 1 and Criterion 5. That is in part, in addition to what Commissioner Melbourne said and Commissioner Thomas said in her statement, is that all of the original buildings stand in the original spot that they were. They retain their footprints, and that all fenestration is original, not the actual windows within it, but the openings, that is all original. And while those pieces are not necessarily what makes it significant, because clearly we've outlined what the historical significance in terms of social history is, those pieces about its integrity have led me to support its designation, and that the integrity hasn't been diminished to such a degree that it can't convey its historic significance. For a period of significance, I would recommend original construction through 1980, and that does include construction dates of some of the major alterations. But I think that period covers what Commissioner Rodriguez was noting. Not to speak for her, but that those alterations came about because of social change, because of community involvement, community recommendation. And so I feel like there are a couple of ways you can make that case for that extended period of significance. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Sure, thank you. I completely agree with what Commissioner Wallace just said, and I just wanted to add to that. I wonder if this kind of expanded period of significance and kind of the expanded criteria that we're looking at means that this property also meets criterion number 3 now. The property contains or is associated with distinctive elements of city or neighborhood identity, in that residents of low-income housing helped shape some of the modifications that took place in the 1970s.
Thank you. Commissioner Alexander.
Thanks. It might be kind of a moot point here. It's a messy situation, a messy issue in front of us, and I definitely appreciate everybody's comments and testimonies and observations from both the public that came here to share their stories as well as my fellow commissioners. I do worry that, as a lot of the staff at MPHA have noted, that designation does hamstring improvements and developments that these communities could benefit from. And I think a lot of people they came up and they talked about what a great experience, what a wonderful place this is. And now we are saying this can be a wonderful place for this many people, and that's all. There was nothing particularly groundbreaking or revolutionary about these buildings when they were built. They're actually, if we're being honest, they're not great designs. There are a lot of things that make them impractical. There are impracticalities that are hard to overcome with improvements. We can improve some of the finishes, but that's not going to make single level living possible in a lot of these units. Accessibility is going to be tricky no matter what. And we live, we've got the 2040 plan. We're looking, we know density is important, particularly along corridors where there are access to resources, easy transportation to jobs, grocery stores. I'm concerned. I understand there are a lot of culturally significant moments associated with this property, with this site. I'm not convinced that the architecture was at the time in 1952 was doing anything particularly special that needs to be preserved. I can see, Commissioner Melbourne, the argument for the social significance. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I've heard so many good stories about how their kids can play outside, how they feel safe, and they really appreciated this community. And I just think, well, there's 4,300 other families that are waiting in line to be able to kind of make that testimony as well. And I feel like we might be doing a disservice to those folks. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Alexander. Commissioner Melblum, do you want to modify your motion?
Yeah, I added, I stated the two, thank you. First of all, thank you, Chair Maston. I stated the two findings for why. I would like to add the third one, suggested by Commissioner Wallace, which is that the buildings still convey their historical integrity. As a sidebar to that, I would agree with Commissioner Alexander. They're not fancy buildings, and I think that's, for me, the compelling reason to save them. We prioritize the grand versus the ordinary, and sometimes the ordinary is the thing that actually represents more of the lives of the people in our community than the grandest places that we have. But I agree with you, it's not an easy decision, but that's why we're here. And I would, based on the comments that I've heard, I would suggest that we set the period of significance from 1952, when the buildings were built, through 1989, when the last renovations to the building were done. And I believe that corresponds to the recommendation from other commissioners.
Andrea Berg.
Thank you, Vice Chair Masson. I wanted to, couple things. I want you to restate the motion. I'm still taking note. There's been a number of modifications. And I also just want to ensure that if the 1989 is being proposed, that is significantly less than 50 years. Now, there is not significantly, but there's nothing in our code that states that it has to be 50 years. You know, that's more of a National Register kind of guideline, but I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that, because as I had mentioned kind of in my suggestion, you know, these do have, this makes a very real difference in how this is carried through. Now, granted, this is, you know, the HPC is making a recommendation to council. It is council's final decision whether or not this district becomes designated. But considering, as I mentioned, considering staff did recommend denial, you know, what is decided here does have real implications. So I encourage you to talk further. I'm not going to put my opinions on it because that's not my job. But when you do go to, and I would request that you read the motion again in its entirety to make sure I can transcribe it. And then I would also just have a question of the clerk, if it is okay, Vice Chair, because I believe I heard a motion and a second before the discussion, and just what the proper protocol is to move forward, either if that has to be voted on, or if Commissioner Melbourne, we can continue modifying the motion at this point.
Through the chair, Ms. Burke, it would be preferable in a perfect world that we would not have friendly amendments, but given the nature of tonight's discussion, I think it's fine that we continue to edit from where we're at, as long as everyone is clear. It sounds like we're going to restate the motion in its entirety. It's not like the proposition was an entirely different motion, so I think we're okay to go ahead as we have been. Thank you for the question.
Commissioner Wallace.
Sorry, before we do that, I just had one more kind of thought, just clarification that, to reiterate, historic designation does not prevent development, does not prevent supporting the human rights of people through the city to have affordable housing, and doesn't prevent any of that from happening. So I just want to be clear that, like, our purview is pretty narrow here. And again, we have a lot of our own personal thoughts and wishes for the city and for the people within it, but our vote is pretty focused. And I just want to be clear that there's a lot of work, regardless of the outcome of tonight. There's a lot of work that can be done. There is work to be done on behalf of all of us. So I just want to lay that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Melblum.
So before I restate this, I guess I would like to ask the question of any of my fellow commissioners if they have other suggestions on what would be the appropriate period of significance, if not 1952 to 1989.
Commissioner Wallace.
Sorry. Thank you. While I understand why you would recommend through 1989, I think that 1980 may be a more appropriate period of significance for the moment. It does cover that initial construction date, and it covers the some of the social movement element that is so compelling in terms of extending it. The other piece is that a period of significance doesn't necessarily have to be set in stone. This will, of course, affect decisions going forward if this designation goes through, but a period of significance can be extended at a later date. So it's just something to think about, that we don't necessarily have to cover that broad of a swath tonight. Just something to consider.
Commissioner Melblum.
I will restate my motion then. So notwithstanding the staff recommendation, I move that the Heritage Preservation Commission recommends that the City Council approve the local designation of the Glendale Townhouses Historic District because it complies with local designation criteria number 1 and 5. It is the first affordable housing project in Minneapolis, and thus its social and community planning qualify it as landmarkable. Number 2, it retains the landscape and volumetric integrity that was initially created when the buildings were built and sited. Number 3, that the buildings still convey their historic integrity, although we recognize that they have been changed over time. And I would like to set the period of significance, or propose we set the period of significance from 1952 to 1972, so that there is a clear demarcation from the first time that the buildings were modified, with the knowledge that it could be extended at a later date. But it seems like a cleaner way to kind of choose that date rather than kind of a date between 1972 and 1989.
Commissioner Wallace seconds the motion.
Thank you, Commissioners Melblum and Wallace. Any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, would the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Alexander.
Nay.
Booty.
Aye.
Hare.
Aye.
Corrado is absent. Melblum.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Wallace.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Maston.
Aye.
Chair Bjornberg is absent. There are 7 ayes and 1 nay.
Thank you. The motion passes. No. Is that the right wording? Yeah. Okay. That concludes our public hearing items. Do commissioners or staff have any announcements or commission business to discuss?
Yes, I do. I'll wait just a moment.
Okay.
If members of the public could please move their conversations outside while the meeting is currently still under gavel.
Do you want me to do it again?
Thank you. Yeah, Andrea Burke, Supervisor for the Historic Preservation Team. I really just have one that thank you for the request for topics for the HBC retreat, which is coming up on May 15th. As I mentioned last time, we will notice for it. It is open to the public, but it is on May 15th, which is a Thursday, which is different than our usual Tuesday. We meet from 3 p.m. to roughly 6 p.m. We meet in the Public Service Building, and we talk about topics, a number of items. They're sort of general to what's been happening with the HPC. If there's refresher items that we want to go over just with regards to some protocol on the HPC, we do that, and then other larger topics that are of concern. So I've received the topics. I am putting together, I have a draft agenda that will go out as normal. So mostly this is just a notice for new commissioners what this is. As I mentioned, it's a little more informal than this meeting, but as I said, the public is invited. We do sometimes get members of the public that show up. We still do roll call. It's still treated as such. So I think that is... There's probably more announcements, but that's the extent of what I have today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners?
Oh, I had a question for, if you don't mind. I'm sorry that I missed the call for topics. Is that still an open discussion that I could?
Commissioner Wallace, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure what happened. You're on the email, but you know what? Stuff happens. That's okay. How about we do this? Yeah, I had to go until the end of yesterday, but I'd say that's fine. If you want to go, if we want to say to the end of the day tomorrow,
sure.
If that's fine. If you want to submit something, that's fine.
Yeah,
I have a draft, but
I apologize. It might have been a city email situation. It's probably.
No worry.
The other question, thank you for that. Yes, I will absolutely adhere to that deadline. Do we have a room? We'll know it's in this building, but is there a room we should plan on being in?
Vice Chair Maston and Commissioner Wallace, it is in room 300 of the Public Service Building, and I will send out orientation to that and where to go. But yes, it's in room 300 of the Public Service Building. So this is the Public Service Center, so it's in the regular city building. Right. Yeah. Right. And so it's mostly we are in a large conference room. We're sitting around a table. And then sometimes members of the public will drop in and listen. But we will have our clerk there to call roll. We often have somebody that takes notes just to track what's going on. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All good questions.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you very much.
Any others? Okay. Did I end up on the wrong sheet? That concludes our public hearing items. There be no other business to come before this meeting, and without objection, I declare this meeting adjourned. The next regular meeting of the HPC is Tuesday, May 6th. Good, no way.